Introduction. What confidence actually is. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood qualities in human experience. It is commonly imagined as a feeling, a particular internal state of certainty and ease that some people naturally possess and others painfully lack. In this imagining, confidence precedes action. You feel it, and then you do the thing. The person without it must acquire it first, somehow, before they can proceed. This model is almost exactly backwards. Confidence is not a feeling that precedes action. It is a judgment about capability, developed through the accumulated evidence of having acted. You do not feel confident before you do the hard thing. You do the hard thing, and from that experience, and from enough repetitions of it, confidence gradually builds. The people who seem effortlessly confident are not experiencing a different internal state from everyone else. They have simply done enough relevant things that their assessment of their own capability is grounded in evidence rather than fear. They still feel uncertainty before new challenges. They have just developed a sufficient track record to know that uncertainty does not equal inability. This book is about building that track record, and about dismantling the thinking patterns that prevent it from being built, or that dismiss the evidence of it when it already exists. Confidence is not a fixed trait. It is a skill. And like any skill, it responds to practice. Chapter 1. The confidence that doesn't help. Not all confidence is useful. There is a version of confidence, loud, assertive, unbothered by doubt, that is largely performative, largely defensive, and largely indifferent to accurate self-assessment. It is the confidence of someone who cannot afford to acknowledge uncertainty, because acknowledging uncertainty would undermine the particular performance they need others to believe. This kind of confidence is brittle. Because it is not grounded in actual evidence of capability, it requires constant maintenance, constant external validation, constant success, constant avoidance of situations where the gap between performance and reality might become visible. It collapses under pressure in characteristic ways. The aggression that cannot accept correction, the defensiveness that cannot receive feedback, the withdrawal that avoids any test that might be failed. The confidence worth building is something quieter. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need to dominate the room. It is a settled sense of one's own capability, accurate about both what is known and what is not, comfortable with uncertainty, not dependent on external affirmation to remain stable. This kind of confidence is boring to observe from the outside and transformative to possess from the inside. Chapter 2. The role of action. Confidence is built through action. This is not a motivational statement. It is a description of how the internal calibration that produces genuine confidence is formed. The calibration depends on evidence. Evidence is produced by action. Without action, no evidence is produced, and the calibration cannot be updated. The implication is that waiting to feel confident before acting is the one guaranteed path to not developing confidence. The action does not need to produce success. In fact, some of the most useful evidence for calibration comes from the experience of failing and discovering that the failure was survivable. That discovery, repeated across different contexts and different challenges, is the foundation of genuine confidence. This means the sequence is important. Act first. Feel the discomfort. Discover the survivability of the discomfort. Update the internal assessment accordingly. Repeat, in slightly more challenging iterations. Over time, the updated assessment becomes the source from which confidence flows. Not the other way around. Chapter 3. What you're really afraid of. Beneath most confidence problems is a specific fear, and it is usually not the fear of failure in the abstract. It is the fear of judgment, of being seen to fail, of the assessment of others in the moment when the attempt falls short, of what that assessment would mean about you as a person. This fear is ancient. Social rejection was, for most of human history, genuinely dangerous. Exclusion from the group was not a temporary discomfort but a threat to survival. The brain's threat response to social judgment is therefore disproportionately large relative to the actual danger that social judgment now presents in most modern contexts. Failing in public is unpleasant. It is rarely catastrophic. The fear treats it as the latter. Examining the specific fear rather than the generic confidence problem is more useful than generic confidence-building advice. What, exactly, are you afraid will happen? What will people think? What would that mean? And if that happened, the judgment, the assessment, the verdict, what would actually follow? The honest, specific answer to that question is almost always less catastrophic than the vague fear makes it feel. Chapter 4. The Evidence You're Ignoring. People with confidence problems consistently discount the evidence of their own capability. They remember the failures with clarity and minimize the successes. They attribute failures to fixed personal deficiencies and attribute successes to luck, to help from others, to favorable circumstances, anything that prevents the success from becoming evidence of capability. This is not merely pessimism. It is a cognitive distortion with a specific function. It maintains the self-image of someone who cannot be held to higher expectations. If you are incapable, you cannot be blamed for failing. If your successes are flukes, no one can expect flukes to continue. The low self-assessment is a kind of preemptive defense against future expectations. Revising this requires deliberately auditing the evidence, not replacing negative beliefs with positive ones, but actually looking at what the record shows. What have you done that was difficult? What have you figured out that you did not know how to figure out? What has gone right, and what was your actual contribution to it? The answers to these questions are usually more supportive of capability than the running internal narrative suggests. Chapter 5. Body and Voice. Confidence is not only an internal state. It has physical expression, and the physical expression feeds back into the internal state. The relationship between body and mind runs in both directions. How you feel affects how you stand, and how you stand affects how you feel. This is not permission to fake it with posture alone. But it is recognition that the physical habits of someone who lacks confidence, the collapsed posture, the quiet voice, the eye contact avoided, actively reinforce the experience of lacking confidence. Changing those physical habits, gradually and with attention, changes something real about the experience. The voice matters particularly. How you speak, the pace, the volume, the willingness to take up time and space with words, communicates something to the people around you and to yourself. The person who speaks slowly, clearly, and without excessive qualification is not necessarily more certain than anyone else. But they are practicing, in every conversation, a kind of presence that accumulates over time into something that both feels and looks like confidence. Chapter 6. Comparison and the Confidence Drain. Nothing drains confidence more reliably than comparison. Not because comparison is inherently harmful, but because the comparisons we make are almost never neutral. We compare our interior to other people's exterior, our uncertainty to other people's visible competence, our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reels. The person on the other side of the comparison is experiencing their own doubt, their own uncertainty, their own fear of inadequacy. What they are not doing is making that experience visible to the people who observe them. The observing audience, seeing only the visible surface, concludes that confidence is the other person's natural state. This conclusion is almost universally wrong. The counter to comparison-driven confidence loss is not to stop noticing other people's capability. That is both impossible and useless. It is to maintain a more accurate model of what that capability actually involves. The person who appears effortlessly confident has practiced whatever they are doing. They were once where you are. The practice is available to you. That is what the evidence of their capability actually says. Chapter 7. Small Wins and Why They Matter. Confidence is not built through dramatic victories. It is built through the accumulation of small, regular experiences of having done what you set out to do. Each small win is a unit of evidence. Evidence that you can initiate, can follow through, can produce the thing you said you would produce. That evidence accumulates, and the accumulation changes the internal assessment of what you are capable of. This means the design of confidence building should prioritize consistency over scale. Small wins, reliably produced, build a more solid foundation than large wins achieved occasionally and unreliably. The athlete who trains steadily builds a more accurate confidence in their fitness than the athlete who trains intensely before competitions. The writer who produces 500 words daily develops a more grounded sense of their productivity than the writer who produces 5,000 words once a month. The enemy of small wins is the dismissal of small wins. The internal voice that says, "That was nothing, that does not count, a confident person would have done more." That voice is worth arguing with. The win counted. It happened. It is evidence. It counts toward the total, and the total is what eventually changes the assessment. Chapter 8. The Impostor in the Room. Impostor syndrome, the experience of feeling fraudulent despite external evidence of competence, is so common among high-achieving people that it has become almost a cliché to discuss. But its prevalence does not diminish its impact. The conviction that you do not really belong, that your success has been accidental, that the people around you will eventually discover you are not what you appear, this conviction undermines confidence and limits what people attempt. What most people with imposter syndrome do not fully understand is that the feeling does not go away with more success. Achievement does not cure it. In some people, it intensifies it, because there is now more to lose, more opportunity for the imagined exposure to occur. The cure, if there is one, is not more external validation but a different relationship with the internal experience, the recognition that the feeling is not evidence of fraud, any more than anxiety about flying is evidence that the plane is about to crash. The feeling can coexist with genuine competence. It does not need to be resolved before you proceed. It can be named, observed, and moved alongside, taking action in its presence rather than waiting for its absence. Over time, that practice is its own form of evidence. Evidence that you are capable of functioning effectively even when the imposter feeling is loudest. Chapter 9. Failure as Data. The relationship you have with failure is among the most important determinants of your long-term confidence. Not because the relationship changes whether failure happens, it will, but because it determines what happens next. Whether failure becomes evidence of fixed limitation or information about what to do differently. Whether it ends the attempt or redirects it. Whether the story it produces is about you or about the specific attempt. Failure as data is a learnable orientation. It involves asking, after a failure, not "what does this say about me?" but "what does this tell me about what I tried, and what would I do differently?" The first question leads to identity conclusions. The second leads to tactical ones. The tactical question is almost always more useful, and it preserves the possibility of the next attempt. The people who build genuine confidence over time are the ones who fail regularly and extract something from the failure that improves the next attempt. Not because they do not feel bad about failing, they do. But because they have developed enough of a relationship with failure to know that the bad feeling is not the final word on the attempt or on them. Chapter 10. Living as if. There is a practice sometimes called acting as if, behaving in the way you would behave if you already had the confidence you were trying to build. Not pretending the feeling is present when it is not, but choosing the actions that a more confident version of you would take, and then taking them despite the absence of the feeling. This practice is grounded in the same principle as all the rest. Action precedes feeling. The confidence you act from produces the evidence that generates actual confidence. The behavior that looks from the outside like existing confidence is, from the inside, a decision to proceed in the absence of it. The voice that says you cannot do this until you feel ready is not a wise voice. It is a protective voice that has confused feeling ready with being ready. Being ready is demonstrated through doing. Feeling ready follows, sometimes slowly, from the evidence that doing generates. You can start with the doing. The feeling will catch up. Conclusion. The confidence you build. The confidence worth having is not the kind that shouts. It is the kind that stays, the quiet, grounded certainty of someone who has done enough hard things to know that the next hard thing is also manageable. Not easy. Not certain. But manageable. That confidence is available to you. Not as a gift, and not as a destination you arrive at once and stay at forever. As a practice, the regular, unglamorous, sometimes uncomfortable practice of doing the thing before you feel ready, taking the small win seriously when it comes, and treating the failure as information rather than verdict. The fix is not a feeling. It is a pattern of behavior, repeated over enough time to change the internal landscape from which action is taken. That pattern is available right now. It does not require you to be different than you are. It requires you to do something different than you have been doing. The distinction matters. Key takeaways. Confidence is not a feeling that precedes action. It is a judgment about capability developed through the evidence of having acted. Action comes first. Confidence follows. The loud, defensive version of confidence is brittle. The confidence worth building is quiet, accurate, and not dependent on external validation to remain stable. The fear beneath most confidence problems is not failure in the abstract, it is being seen to fail. That fear is ancient, disproportionate to modern risk, and worth examining specifically. People with confidence problems consistently discount their own evidence. A deliberate audit of the actual record almost always reveals more capability than the internal narrative suggests. Small wins build confidence more reliably than large wins. Consistency of evidence matters more than scale. Impostor syndrome does not go away with more success. The practice is to act alongside the feeling, not to wait for its resolution. Failure as data. Asking what the failure tells me rather than what it says about me is a learnable orientation that preserves the possibility of the next attempt. A note at the end. The confidence you are looking for is closer than it feels. Not because it will appear without effort, but because the effort required to produce it is not as extraordinary as the gap between your current state and your desired state makes it seem. It begins with the next small thing done despite the uncertainty. The small win taken seriously rather than dismissed. The failure treated as information rather than verdict. Repeated, with attention, over time. That is the whole program. Not simple, the consistency is hard, and the patterns that resist it are strong. But available. Starting from wherever you are, with whatever you have. The record changes one entry at a time.